You avoid that difficult conversation, dodge that conflict, let it slide when someone disrespects you. Machiavelli discovered something few know. Those who avoid confrontations might actually be demonstrating the most refined type of power. It's not escape, it's strategy. And in the next few minutes, you'll understand why history's most intelligent men chose their battles instead of fighting them all. Machiavelli studied princes who lasted in power and those who fell quickly. Those who fell were always the most reactive, those who responded to every provocation, those who constantly needed to prove their strength. Those who remained in power had something different. They understood there's a difference between having power and needing to demonstrate it. There's an invisible mechanism behind choosing to avoid confrontations, a pattern that separates those who act from wisdom from those who act from fear. And when you understand this mechanism, everything changes. You begin to choose when and where to use your strength, like an archer who doesn't waste arrows shooting in any direction, but waits for the exact moment for the perfect shot. Your brain was programmed thousands of years ago for two responses, fight or flight. When a tiger appeared in front of cavemen, there was no time for philosophy. It was life or death in seconds. Today you don't face tigers, but your brain still functions as if you did. Every provocation becomes a matter of survival. The problem is that whoever provokes you knows this. Consciously or not, that person might be betting on your automatic reaction. They're counting on you reacting without thinking, and when you do that, the one thinking for you is them. There's a third option that's neither fighting nor fleeing. It's observing, showing clarity and self-control in the situation, creating space between stimulus and response, a moment of internal silence where you can consciously choose how to react or whether to react. The fundamental difference between someone who avoids conflicts from fear and one who avoids them strategically is that those who avoid conflicts from fear do so because they don't want to get hurt, and those who avoid strategically do so to save energy for battles that matter. If you stop to throw stones at every barking dog, you'll never reach your goal. When you act from fear, your body betrays you. You look away, quicken your pace, change subjects rapidly. Whoever's watching notices the escape and gains power over you. When you act strategically, your body should communicate control. You maintain steady eye contact, calm rhythm, dense silence. The person who acts from fear is always reacting to the environment. The one who acts strategically is always shaping the environment. One is a leaf in the wind, the other is the wind that moves the leaves. Power isn't in winning every battle, but in making unnecessary battles simply not happen. When your presence is strong enough, conflicts dissolve before they're born. But how do you develop this type of powerful presence? How do you transform the natural tendency to avoid confrontations into a weapon of silent domination? The secret lies in understanding there are 3 levels of intelligence at play when you choose not to fight. In his writings, Machiavelli recorded a crucial observation about leadership: rulers who lasted decades in power and others who lost everything in months. The difference wasn't in courage to fight, but in wisdom to choose when fighting was worthwhile. Reflect on your own life. How many times have you worn yourself out in arguments that ultimately changed absolutely nothing? How many times did you waste emotional energy proving you were right to people who would never acknowledge it? How many times did you reach the end of the day exhausted from defending positions that weren't even that important? There's a difference between territories worth defending and territories you can yield without losing real power. Your ego wants to defend everything, but your power grows when you defend only what's essential. When someone questions your competence in a secondary matter, you can let it pass. When someone tries to diminish your value in an area that doesn't define who you are, you can ignore it. When someone provokes in a situation where fighting won't bring you any concrete gain, you can simply not participate. But when someone attacks something fundamental, something that truly matters to your position or dignity, then you act. And you act with all the force you saved by ignoring insignificant provocations. The difference in intensity is so great that the person on the other side immediately realizes they touched something they shouldn't have. It's like a river that flows around small stones without resistance, but when it encounters a mountain, it carves a path through it with devastating force. Water doesn't fight every obstacle, but when it decides to fight, it moves mountains. Machiavelli taught that the intelligent prince lets his enemies exhaust themselves attacking empty positions, while he fortifies only the points that truly matter. In the end, They become exhausted from attacking the wind, and he remains strong in the places that define his power. Have you noticed how the most powerful people around you never seem to be fighting over small things? They have an almost irritating calm in the face of provocations that would make anyone explode. It's not lack of blood in their veins, it's excess strategic intelligence. But Machiavelli was only the first level of this wisdom. There was an ancient warrior who took this art to an even more refined level. He discovered how to transform the very avoidance of conflicts into a weapon of domination. Sun Tzu wrote the phrase that forever changed how intelligent men faced conflicts. Supreme excellence consists of winning without fighting. Sun Tzu understood that every war cost a lot. Even when you won, dead soldiers, spent resources, lost time, wasted energy. But making the enemy give up fighting before the war began, that cost nothing. And the result was the same. He discovered that most conflicts happen because both parties believe there's only one way to resolve the situation. One wins and the other loses. But Sun Tzu found a third option. Create situations where the other party chooses to lose on their own because they realize fighting would be worse for them. Consider two approaches to achieving behavioral change. The most obvious way would be to confront directly. Approach the person and say exactly what you think. 90% of the time this generates resistance. The person closes off, becomes defensive, and you end up in a war nobody should have started. Sun Tzu would do differently. He would study why that person acts that way, what need they're trying to satisfy with that behavior, what fear they have of changing it. Then he'd create a situation where change seemed advantageous to them, where they themselves reached the conclusion that acting differently was better. It's the difference between pushing a door and finding the right key. When you push, you encounter resistance. When you use the key, the door opens by itself. Sun Tzu realized that people resist when they feel forced, but cooperate when they feel they're choosing. So he developed techniques to make his choices seem like the best available options, without ever taking away from the other person the feeling that they were in control. The general who won without fighting didn't need to prove he was stronger. He simply organized circumstances so that being stronger became irrelevant. Like a chess master who doesn't need to capture the king because he achieves a position where the king has no possible moves. Have you been through situations where someone got exactly what they wanted from you, and you only realized afterward that you'd been influenced? It wasn't crude manipulation, it was such subtle guidance that you felt respected throughout the process. This is the art Sun Tzu mastered. There's a third, even deeper level. A psychologist who discovered that conflict avoidance sometimes reveals not strategic wisdom, but unconscious patterns that might be sabotaging your life without you realizing it. Jung made a disturbing discovery. Not all conflict avoidance comes from wisdom. Sometimes it comes from wounds so deep you don't even remember when they were made. Wounds that shaped your personality so that you believe you're being strategic when you're actually being controlled by fears you no longer recognize. He called this the shadow. That part of you that was rejected, repressed, hidden so well it became automatic. As a child, perhaps you learned that expressing anger brought painful consequences. So you buried anger so deep that now, as an adult, you don't even feel when you should be angry. You believe you're choosing peace, but you're actually fleeing from an emotion you learned to fear. The difference is subtle, but crucial. The strategist chooses to avoid conflicts because he calculated it's not worth it. The wounded avoids conflicts because he fears feeling the pain that comes with them. One acts from strength, the other from weakness. One is expanding his power, the other is protecting his wound. Your body reveals which one is operating. Cold calm, mental clarity, sense of control indicate strategy. Chest tightness, urge to disappear. Unexplained anxiety reveal the shadow in action. The problem is when you act from the shadow, people notice. Your energy changes. Your posture becomes defensive. Your voice sounds different. And this attracts exactly the type of person who likes exploiting weaknesses. As if you were carrying an invisible sign reading, "Fear here, come test." Jung saw that many people spend their entire lives believing they're peaceful by nature when they're actually fearful by conditioning. They confuse compulsive avoidance with conscious choice. They believe they're being wise when they're being slaves to patterns they don't even know exist. But he also discovered something liberating. When you recognize these patterns, you can change them. When you see you're avoiding conflicts from fear instead of strategy, You can start making real choices. You can decide when it's worth feeling the discomfort of confrontation to achieve something that truly matters. The person who acts strategically has flexibility, can choose to fight when it's worth it, and retreat when it's not. The one who acts from fear is trapped, will always retreat, even when they should advance. Jung taught that real freedom comes from having genuine options, not automatically following the pattern that seems safest. Self-knowledge isn't intellectual luxury. It's the difference between being a conscious strategist and an unconscious slave to your own fears. Jung showed that only when you see your shadows can you consciously choose how to act facing life's conflicts. Now that you understand the three levels, Machiavelli's strategy, Sun Tzu's technique, and Jung's psychology, it's time to see how they combine in practice, how to transform this knowledge into real presence. Imagine you're facing a real conflict. Someone disrespects you, questions your competence, tries to diminish you in front of others. In that moment, three voices speak within you. The first is Machiavelli asking, "Is it worth spending your power here?" The second is Sun Tzu whispering, "Is there a way to get what you want without this war?" The third is Jung warning, "Are you reacting from strategy or from wound?" When the three voices align, your response becomes devastatingly effective. You act with the precision of someone who calculated costs, the elegance of someone who doesn't need brute force, and the authenticity of someone who knows their own motivations. The person who only knows Machiavelli might be strategic, but too cold, calculates well but sometimes misses opportunities to resolve things more simply. The one who only knows Sun Tzu might be very subtle, but lose timing of when it's necessary to show strength. The one who only knows Jung might have much self-knowledge, but become paralyzed in analysis without ever acting. But when you master all three, something magical happens. You develop a presence that dissolves conflicts before they're born, not because you flee from them, but because your energy clearly communicates that provoking you isn't a good idea. People sense you're not afraid to fight, but prefer not to waste time with it. Your economy of reactions makes it so when you finally react, the impact is multiplied. Like someone who speaks little, when they finally speak, everyone stops to listen. Observe those people you know who you've never seen fighting with anyone, but clearly no one would dare disrespect. They have an aura of tranquil strength, of power that doesn't need to prove itself. They're not saints, not weak, they just chose a more sophisticated level of operation. They learned there are three ways to handle conflicts: win by force, win by intelligence, or make conflict unnecessary. The third option is always most elegant when you have the maturity to use it. When you combine Machiavelli's strategic vision, Sun Tzu's tactical subtlety, and Jung's deep self-knowledge, you don't avoid conflicts from weakness. You transcend them from strength. You don't flee from war, you rise above it. Your presence becomes a silent declaration. I could fight you, but I have more important things to do. This communicates a level of personal value that no argument could establish. It's more powerful than any victory in any fight. But this state doesn't happen by chance. It needs to be consciously cultivated, transformed into a new automatic pattern. It needs to become part of who you are, not just something you do occasionally. And that's where true transformation happens. When avoiding confrontations stops being a tactic and becomes a natural expression of your inner strength. There's a moment in every man's life when he stops proving he has power and simply becomes powerful. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a silent metamorphosis that begins when you understand your energy is too precious to be wasted in insignificant wars. You don't wake up different one day, but people start treating you differently. They stop testing your limits as frequently. They measure their words more before speaking to you, not because you became more aggressive, but because you became more selective. Your presence communicates that provoking you has consequences, even though you rarely need to apply them. It's like a sword that rarely leaves its sheath. Its strength doesn't come from always cutting, but from everyone knowing it can cut when necessary. The most feared samurai wasn't the one who killed more enemies, but the one who needed to kill fewer, because his reputation did the work for him. When you stop reacting to all provocations, something interesting happens with those who used to provoke you. They get frustrated. They expected the usual reaction and found emptiness. Then they try to escalate, provoke more until they realize they're looking desperate for attention while you remain unshakable. Your calm becomes a mirror, reflecting their emotional instability. Without saying a word, You expose the difference in maturity between you. They feel this and start behaving differently around you. Not from fear, but from unconscious respect. You become like a mountain. Storms may roar around you, but you remain immobile. And with time, the storms themselves learn to go around you instead of trying to knock you down. Your stability changes the dynamic of every environment where you're present. People start seeking your opinion before entering conflicts. They feel you see things they can't see. Your tendency to avoid unnecessary fights is interpreted as wisdom, not weakness. You become a reference of balance in a world full of uncontrolled people. But the deepest transformation happens within you. You stop carrying the constant tension of someone always defending themselves. Your mind becomes clearer, your decisions more accurate, your energy more focused. When you don't spend strength fighting over everything, much more strength remains to conquer what truly matters. You develop a different confidence, not the nervous confidence of someone who needs to prove something, but the serene confidence of someone who already knows their own worth. It's a change reflected in your gaze, your posture, your speaking rhythm. People feel this change before you even open your mouth. Your presence begins communicating a clear message. I don't need to fight you because I know exactly who I am. And when someone knows exactly who they are, the entire world conspires to respect them. If you've made it this far, if you've absorbed every word of this journey, you're no longer the same person who started watching. Something within you has changed, and this change will reflect in every conflict you choose to avoid from now on. Now you've seen how Machiavelli viewed the true nature of power through conflicts. Click the video on screen and discover the secrets he kept about reading people just by observing their reactions. Truths that will forever change how you see human behavior. Click the video on screen now